Descartes is likely to be the most widely well-known philosopher in history. Practically everyone has heard the famous phrase, "I think, therefore I am," cogito ergo sum. We will try to get a sense of why he says this, and how he gets there, and what this strange phrase even means. Descartes marks a fundamental turning point, inaugurating a new era in philosophy and science, of which we are the direct heirs. His contributions to mathematics and the sciences include the invention of algebra, or also known as analytic geometry, and the establishment of a scientific method in the sciences, which is still the standard of inquiry we use today. Descartes wants to start over with a clean slate. Though he has received the best education, he's not confident that what he has been taught is true, because there is so much unresolved disagreement among the learned. He wants to lay a new foundation for a systematic body of knowledge, based on certain and indubitable principles. To find these principles, he begins by stripping away all of the things that once have deceived him. And thus I realized that once in my life I had to raze everything to the ground and begin again from the original foundations if I wanted to establish anything firm and lasting in the sciences. We all know that what our eyes tell us isn't always the case. We see someone in the distance, but we can't quite tell if it's Peter or Paul. And we are all familiar with optical illusions, which are designed to trick our eyes into seeing something that we know can't be true. The classic example is the pencil in the glass of water. The eyes see the straight thing as bent, but we know in our minds that it's not bent, and we can figure out through experiment that it's not bent. But can we even be certain that we are seeing? Don't we believe we are using our senses sometimes when we are actually dreaming? Everything seems so real, but it all exists only in our imagination. How exactly can I be sure that I'm not dreaming right now? I'm sure that I feel awake, but is there any specific criterion by which I can truly tell the difference between waking and sleeping? But is there anything that I can't call into question and doubt? Is there anything that has to be true whether I'm asleep or awake? Isn't 5 plus 7 equals 12 always true? Isn't it always true that when two things equal a third thing, those things are equal to each other? Don't the laws of arithmetic and geometry hold true universally for all time? But what if we could imagine that there was some all-powerful, evil deceiver who was in control of my thoughts? Such a being could make it that my thinking was always mistaken, even about arithmetic, even about 2 plus 2 equals 4. It's not inconceivable that such a being could deceive me about the things that seem even the most self-evident. But is there anything that such a being could not deceive me about, even if I'm just a brain in a vat, wired to a machine that controls my mind? All my consciousness could just be a simulation, in a machine, in an experiment, run by some super scientist. How could I know the difference? Anyone who's seen the movie The Matrix has some idea of what I have in mind. But could the machine even be fooling me that I think? That I exist? Who would be being deceived if I didn't exist? Being deceived and doubting are kinds of thinking. And if I think, therefore I am. But what am I, this thing that thinks? I am a mind that, quote, doubts and understands and affirms and denies and wills and refuses, and that also imagines and senses. But just because my senses perceive, does that mean that I know that I have a body? Not quite. I'm still stuck in my mind. I can't deny that I see, but I don't yet know that the things that I see exist, and I don't even know whether my own body is real. But I do know that my mind is different from and separate from my body. My senses and my sense organs are different. Seeing is not just a function of my body, but more primarily of my mind. I know for certain that I am conscious that I perceive, but I'm less confident about what part of my body is doing the perceiving. Is it my eye? Is it my brain? I can at least be certain that I, my mind, perceives. But how does my mind interact with my brain and my eyes? What is the relationship between mind and body? And Descartes tells us that we even know more clearly and distinctly that my mind exists than that my body exists. For we can imagine existing in our mind without a body. A medieval philosopher named Avicenna came up with a thought experiment in which none of our senses were affected. Perhaps we still had a body, but it was in a state where it perceived nothing. Avicenna asked us to imagine that we were a floating body. Even if we did not perceive our weight or have any sense of touch, would we still be thinking? If we closed our eyes or could no longer see, could we still be thinking? If we took away all the senses, could there be anything left besides the mind and its pure awareness of itself? And now that you look into Descartes' eyes, remember him when you try to get a good night's sleep tonight. Thanks again for listening, and I look forward to talking more with you on the discussion boards.